Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Crusaders. That's right. Cinema Crusaders is back. We're going to be doing two different types of shows coming up in the near future, but we're starting back with our old reliable, our retro movie reviews. And without further ado, I am going to show you the trailer for the movie we're going to be talking about today, which is Bob Hope and Paulette Goddard in The Ghostbreakers from 1940. Let's check it out. All right, so that's our movie that we're going to be talking about for today. And now I'm going to introduce you to my co-hosts. I'm very happy to have them. So first, I'm going to introduce you to a new member of Comic Crusaders and a new member of Cinema Crusaders. I'm very happy to have him here. He's the host of Awesome Sauce Radio. He's the comic pimp himself. Let's give a welcome to Blind Adam. How you doing, Blind?
Hey, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, man.
No problem. I am so glad to have you here. Honored to have you on the show with us, and looking forward to talk.
Yeah, man. This can be awesome sauce.
Cool, great. Now I'm also very happy to introduce. He's got a new comic out for Omen Comics, and he's my co-host with me on Sloppy Spoilers. He does a bunch of stuff for Comic Crusaders as well. Let's give a welcome to Shade Wing, Steve Sellers.
Hey, ready to break some ghosts, man. this was a movie I didn't know too much about until we started talking about it, but I think it's going to be interesting.
Cool. And I'm going to introduce you to the Godfather, the Jefe, the Prince of Darkness himself, the Jefe of ASAP Comics, contributor to Comic Crusaders as well. Give a welcome to Paul Hayden.
Hey.
What's up,
right.
Paul?
How's it going, man? You all right?
Cool. All right. So, as always, everybody who's familiar with Cinema Crusaders knows that we talk about movies that are at least 10 years old. Our goal is to give a brief rundown on them, talk about the cast, the production, and then, most importantly, we talk about if the movie, we think, how it would translate to modern audiences. So, real quick rundown on the plot of this movie. You got a lot of it from the trailer. Bob Hope is a radio personality in New York. He covers the mafia. He thinks he's killed somebody by accident. It's a whole comedic scene there in a hotel. And he ends up getting introduced to Paulette Goddard, who is in trouble because she's inherited an island in Cuba. And the island is supposed to be haunted. Long story short, Bob Hope is a Ghostbreaker who's going to help Paulette Goddard figure out what's going on with the mystery of her island and her castle down in Cuba. This is back when Americans went to Cuba all the time and everything, so I'm sure we'll get into that. And I'm not going to give everything away about the story, but there are ghosts, but there aren't ghosts. So there's both things going on. The interesting thing is this movie actually was one of the movies that inspired Ghostbusters in the 80s. So Harold Ramis actually said that he watched this movie and inspired him to write Ghostbusters, and it had the same kind of formula. Although Ghostbusters, I would say, took that even farther with Bill Murray and everything else. And maybe we'll do that movie someday. So that said, I want to kick it around to my host first, or my co-host, to talk about their impressions of the cast. We had a number of different people in here. We had Bob Hope, obviously. We had Paulette Goddard. We had a very interesting person we're going to talk a little bit about, Willie Best, who played Alex. We have a very young Anthony Quinn in this, who plays Ramon Menderos and his twin brother. That was a very interesting casting. So I'm going to kick it over to Adam first. What did you think of the cast in this movie?
Let's see. Bob Hope. It was nice to see him doing something when he wasn't entertaining the troops. Movies from this era are a little bit out of my wheelhouse, so it was nice to, watch something from this era and be actually entertained. The rest of the cast, it took me a little while to figure out, but it actually really is a comedy of the time. Very, reaction comedy type stuff.
Absolutely.
The actress, she's 1940s hot.
Absolutely. I think I was born in the wrong era, because I see the actresses from this time, and the hairstyle and everything. I'm just like, give me some Andrews sisters going on, and I'm ready to go. I'm Captain America, I guess. I'm a man out of time. So because I think Paulette Goddard is definitely hot. And my wife knows that. She's over here giving me the look. So, so I'm going to stay on this podcast as long as possible so I don't get hurt. Yeah, Bob Hope, I agree. Definitely funny. Willie Best, I think, is interesting. I definitely know that we're going to talk a little bit more about Willie Best and his character when we're talking about how this translates to modern audiences. One of the things I think is fascinating is this is one of Anthony Quinn's early appearances, 1940. Very, very young in this movie. So I'm going to kick it over to Shade Wing. What did you think about the cast in this movie?
Yeah, generally they were pretty good, I think, particularly for the time. Bob Hope I had never actually seen in an acting role. I mainly remember him from all those specials he did, like when I was really young, and like maybe like for doing Academy Awards sort of things. That's mainly what I remember him for. I've never actually seen him act. And actually, in terms of acting, and there's not a whole lot, I feel like he's doing the Bob Hope routine, kind of married to this bumbling character who is kind of sort of, he is the main hero, but at the same time, it's like you just can't get away from the fact that this is Bob Hope. And I can't help but wonder whether he did a lot of improv or ad-libbing on some of the lines, because there are times when he does his lines, it feels like a Bob Hope line rather than like something the screenwriters would have put in. And they're actually funny, because I mean they're actually really good lines. So I can't fault him for that. Paulette Goddard, yeah, I think Adam nailed it. She's absolutely like one of these really hot actresses of the standards of the time, and they definitely show her off in various scenes. So if that's what you're looking for, by 1940 standards, you do get some of that. But yeah. I think she's actually a pretty interesting actress as well. I think she does a very good job playing this character, and she has an interesting life, as we were talking about earlier, where she was actually married to Charlie Chaplin. That's how she got her start. So she was able to do the comedy stuff, and she was able to do the drama. So all of that really kind of worked. Anthony Quinn, definitely pre-Barabbas. But I think he definitely shows like what his chops are. He just doesn't really get a chance to do a whole lot other than be intimidating. There was a time when he was completely underestimated because all he was doing was like Native Americans and things like that. And that really is kind of unfortunate because he really had a lot of acting chops, as you see in a lot of his later films when he's more allowed to do that. Willie Best, I thought he was pretty good. He was funny. I think, unfortunately, his character is a little disturbed by the script, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And yeah, I think overall, I think all these actors are pretty solid. I mean, there was no time when, I felt like the performance was off-putting or I was annoyed by anybody or anything like that. And I was usually laughing along with them. So yeah, I think everybody did okay.
Definitely. I think it's interesting. I know we're going to talk about Willie Best some more, but Willie Best came out to Hollywood to be a carpenter. He was traveling and doing like day labor and stuff and ended up getting a career in Hollywood. Unfortunately, his career was mostly playing these types of characters. And we'll definitely talk about that. I think it's part of the time and part of the fact that he was hugely popular playing these characters, And so he got, what's the word I'm looking for? Not stereotyped, typecast, So I think he got typecast for a couple different reasons. One, because of his race, and two, because he was funny in those roles. And Bob Hope even credited him as being one of the funniest people he'd ever worked with. I think your comments about Bob Hope are interesting. Bob Hope loved this movie, from what I've come to understand, because it was the one time he got to play a hero. And even though he was cowardly in this movie, he's less cowardly than most of the characters he played. What you said about him ad-libbing is absolutely true. Bob Hope got started in vaudeville, and so he brought that all the time. If you ever want to check out, I've watched tons of Bob Hope movies. I love Bob Hope and Cary Grant. And if you watch Paleface, or not Paleface, oh God, he's in a movie with Lucille Ball, and it's absolutely hilarious. The two of them together, very, very good. Huh?
I said that's interesting. I'll have to do research on that because I love Lucille Ball.
He was also in a couple movies. He was in Paleface's Son of Paleface, and he was in with one of the great pinup queens from the time, and I can't remember her name right off the top of my head. But Freudian slip.
Okay, go on.
Yeah, but he was. God, now I gotta look. So I'll look while I kick it over to Paul. Paul, what did you think of the cast here in this movie?
I agree with a lot of things that have been said. Like, for example, when Shadwin was saying about Bob Hope being Bob Hope. I think these were days where if you went to see a film that had got Bing Crosby in it, you're just going to see Bing Crosby. You're not, this was before the time of like method acting. I couldn't imagine Bob Hope, in between takes still being his character. I can imagine him, talking about his next golfing experience, or again when he gets to do the Academy Awards. So yeah, and I think one of the things that always makes me smile is when we talk about genres of films, and this film has mystery / horror / comedy, and it's like, where's the fight of that? Well, Bob Hope's in it, so comedy is straight to the forefront. It's going to be less about anything mysterious. So I think back then the name carried it before, the title.
Absolutely, I think that's a great point. I just looked up those movies, by the way. So the movie he was in with Lucille Ball, he was in a couple movies with her. One of the funniest, the first time they was in a movie with Lucille Ball, she's really young, but really funny in this movie. It's called Fancy Pants, if you want to check it out.
All right, cool.
And then the movie, he was in Paleface and Son of Paleface with Jane Russell. And Jane Russell, the whole movie is sporting like what at the time would be like a thong bikini. So she's walking around in like, different outfits and stuff like that. So she was, but don't get me wrong, she carries, her screen time very well in the movie as well. Funny movies, but once again, it's Bob Hope pretty much playing Bob Hope. He was the Keanu Reeves of his time, before Keanu Reeves became something else. So, all right. So that said, let's get into there isn't a whole lot to talk about here. I mean, we could touch, if we had Lance here, I'm sure he would be talking about the black and white and everything because it looks beautiful. It's obviously shot on film. So, you know, we can touch on that. There were some special effects. You know, there was like some rain and lightning. There were some very, you know, I'm sure for the time, ghost effects for the 1940s. I think it looked like mostly what they did was either hand animation or it was double exposures or something like that. So it looked good. I don't think it was anything special, especially for today, but it puts you in the mood. So for a 1940s film, it did feel like a horror movie, you know. So that's kind of my takeaway. I'm going to kick it over to Steve first. What did you think of the overall look of the film, the production value of the film?
It's very solid for its time. I would say a lot of it is practical effects. I'm pretty sure the whole thing was on a set or on the Hollywood lot, because what they're trying to show with the New York backdrop, it definitely looked like stock footage. And then there were other times when you definitely see like footage where it's superimposed in the background, like when they're coming in and they're seeing the Morro Castle. And as an aside, that castle is real. It is definitely something that they actually used, and it was actually later used under the Castro regime to keep a political prisoner at one point. I found that out.
Wow.
So yeah, that location is real, but I don't think they went there. I think all of that was on a sound stage or on a backlot or some sort of effect that they were doing. The only real special effects were the ghost scenes, which were okay. You had them; they looked okay for the time, but I don't know. I kept really thinking that you really didn't need any of the horror elements at all. Honestly, it seemed like you could really interpret most of what goes on as being one of those things where they're kind of, you know, faking the horror elements, but they're not necessarily real. The only thing that I think really kind of breaks that is the ghost scenes towards the end. You know, where you see that ghost like pacing around where he's buried. It looks okay. It's very, you know, by my modern standards, it's kind of laughable, but for the 1940s, it's not bad. And everything else is pretty good, from the lightning effects to the weather effects, you know, to you know, the way that it's atmospheric in the haunted castle, all of that. So I would say that for what it's trying to do, it's fine. It doesn't hold a candle to what CGI could do now, or even what they could do, you know, with practical effects in, you know, 30 years ago. But, you know, it does what it needs to do. It tells the story. It doesn't take you out of it.
It's interesting. I do want to kind of we're going to circle back. I want to see what you guys thought of the story, because I think what you were saying there is interesting about how if you'd taken the horror out of this, I think it still would have been a funny movie, but it would have become more like a Scooby-Doo movie. So
yeah.
I was going to say that exact thing. Yeah.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Because I was going to say, with the effects that they have, it's a live-action Scooby-Doo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what did you think overall of the movie itself? Like, were you transported? Did it suspend disbelief for you, Adam? What did you think of?
I kind of saying, well, before we got started, some of this was a little difficult because movies from this era are mostly not audio descriptive for people with visual impairments.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's a lot of things that I was trying to figure things out, but I mean, the castle stuff was well done. I mean, I'm going to just assume that the New York stuff was done a lot in stock footage, but it, you know, it was well for the time period. I thought it was well done.
I think that's kind of unfortunate that not a lot of old movies are set up for people with visual impairments, because I think there's a lot of old movies that are great, you know, that need to be experienced by anybody who wants to experience them. So,
yeah, like I said, because I'm in minority. You know, I'm a visually impaired person who works in comics, works in films, and you know, I love history. So, you know, it's very odd that, you know, when I want to find something that's audio descriptive, where I want to get the full experience.
Definitely.
And for anyone who doesn't know, who knows what the audio descriptive is, it's like a second audio track. So there's something that's non-dialogue, And now the character A is picking up a white dress out of the walk-in closet, and it's really super descriptive of what's going on.
Cool.
Which is something like this would, especially from a movie that like this, would have been a little bit more helpful at times.
Definitely. I mean, and that's kind of the whole point of this show, is to bring older movies to new audiences. So, I don't know, maybe it's something we could look into. And anybody out there who's watching this who does those sorts of things, think about bringing audio description audio for older movies, because these are movies that, even with some of the stuff we're going to talk about later, they definitely have value, and we don't want to lose them, because I think they're important historically. I'm going to kick it over to Paul. What did you think of the look of the movie, the production value for the time, or anything you want to weigh in on?
It is sign of the times. It's whenever I think of whether it's movies in history, the geek in me always circles back to Doctor Who. It's always a sign of the times. And again, if you look at it, this influenced Ghostbusters and again a sign of the times, which then went on to influence something else. So I agree 100%, because I was actually going to say it's like a live action Scooby-Doo before they knew Matthew Lillard existed. So it definitely had that aspect. But yeah, I mean, there's a certain, for me, there's a certain romance to old films, because this was the beginning of so much, that we, they had to go through certain processes for us to get to where we are today with films, and so on and so forth. And it's I think Shadwin touched upon it. You can almost forgive some of it for looking horrendous, and you could almost again, the geek in me, you always think of Star Trek and the wobble background. There's a guy the other side of the door going shh, and it's the same for this. I love it because it is a sign of the times. It was what it was, and it is what it is, and it led us to where we are. So I think, even though yes, you can pick fault with it, and yes, you could kind of pull it apart, I think it's beautiful for its place in history.
I think it's so interesting you say that, because I agree with that 100%. Because a lot of the stuff, they were making it up as they went along, or this was brand new technology. I mean, you think about Harryhausen and his stop motion animation. That guy invented that. And some of the early stuff, looks dated now, but you think about all of the work that went into what he did. So it's the same thing here. Somebody decided, oh, we're gonna have a movie with ghosts, and a ghost is gonna come up out of a coffin and walk around and look transparent. And I'm sure at the time some producer or director was looking like, are you insane? It's like, how are we going to do that? So yeah. Definitely interesting. So I summed up the plot, and now I'm going to kick it back around to you guys. We do this a little bit on Sloppy Spoilers. I don't want to take a whole Sloppy Spoilers, 2 hours to dissect the story and everything, right. But what did you think of the story itself? What did you think of the story? Was it okay? Did you have problems with it? Was it hokey? Anything you have to throw in about the story, I'm really curious to hear. And I'm gonna kick it over to Paul first and see what he thinks. So.
It again, it's that thing. It's like I think because of the sign of the times, what they might not have considered hokey then, we would look back and consider hokey now. And again, it's that influence of your leading man. Mm-hmm. How much of the eyes were just on him, and as Shadwin says, it's like how much of it was ad-libbed, and how much of it was played with. I thought it was good, I thought it's taking into account all of those kind of little bits, and because you're looking at it as pulling apart, because that's obviously what we do here. So I kind of go into it looking at it differently. Mm-hmm. Rather than just me sitting and watching a film, I'm like, You know, and you do then start to pull things apart. But I thought, all in all, yeah, no, it was good, but it was obviously a lot of it was very dated.
Yes, absolutely. I agree, but at the same time, if you think of it as a dated movie, one of the things that gets me is a lot of the jokes and references, the interactions between Paulette Goddard and Bob Hope are really risque for the time. If you think about it, you know, there was a couple there where it's like it was bordering on, you know, wink, wink, nod, nod for now about him, like, you know, I'm gonna stick around and you'll serve me breakfast or whatever type thing, you know. So pretty crazy stuff, you know. And you think about this is 1940. I mean, we're not even in World War II yet. So
no.
I thought there were some points where it would be going what they would call back in those times the dirty loops.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What did you think of the story, Adam? What did you think of the general
thought
concept?
it is, you know, a little cheesy in spots, but it was an entertaining cheesy. I didn't feel like it was.
No.
I didn't feel like it was a. Ooh, this is it entertained me for the amount of time it was for the movie. It was something that I was like, this is cool, and I like the gangster element. And once you got to the castle, I was like, okay, it's not an over the top type cheesy. It's like a slapstick horror / comedic type cheesy.
I think it's one of those movies. I think if it came out today, it's one of those movies where, God, I hate to make this example because Shadwick and I reviewed this movie and kind of tore it apart, but it's an Army of the Dead type movie where it's like you just can't take it too seriously. You just have a beer and some wings and you sit back and you enjoy the movie, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's an easy watch.
Yeah. So that said, I'm going to kick it over to Shadwick. What do you think of the plot of the movie?
Yeah, I think you guys covered a lot of the points that I would have. I would say that for this movie, there are a lot of different elements that they try to put together. So, like Paul was saying, yeah, it is a horror and it is a mystery and it is, you know, this guy trying to run away from the mafia and it is this adventure over in Havana. You know, so you get a little bit of high adventure and you get all these things, and on top of that, you know, you throw in Bob Hope, and the unifying point is the comedy. And I'm thinking if they try to make a movie like this now, it would have been like 3 or 4 hours because there's so much of it. You know, there's so many things that they cram in, and at the same time, there's an economy to the movie that they don't have today, which I really kind of appreciate. There are definite elements that, yeah, I could pick some things apart. There are things that it's like, okay, you know, why, you know, would you, if he's really a zombie, you know, why is he wearing a suit of armor, you know, hitting somebody with a mace, lying in wait for them? You know, a zombie wouldn't be that stupid, right? But I really think that he really wasn't a zombie at all. That's another theory. But yeah, you get elements like that. And so, but the thing I think that really keeps it together is the fact that Bob Hope is consistently entertaining. He's consistently funny. He has, you know, good dynamics with Willie Best, with Paulette Goddard. There's really good romantic chemistry between the two main leads. And there's what you have is basically charm, you know, old Hollywood charm that holds all of it together, even though you could probably pick various elements apart and say, okay, why is this going on? You know, this doesn't quite add up, you know, in terms of the mystery or whatever. But you don't really care because everything is just so much fun that you can just kind of let it go. So yeah, there is a little bit of an Army of the Dead element to it in that respect. But there were far fewer things that took me out of this movie than it did with that one.
All right. Now that begs the question before we get to modern audiences. Now I got to ask, quick rapid fire question. What'd you guys think of the ending, that stereotypical Hollywood happy ending where, you know, Paulette Goddard and Bob Hope, who have known each other all of 2 days, go through this castle thing. Now they're going to get married, you know, and they go off into the sunshine. What did you think of that? I'll start with Adam.
It made me laugh because I saw it coming a while away. I was like, yeah, they're going to get married at the end.
Yeah.
I was like, this is every movie from 1940 to 1970. They're going to fall in love. And run off into the sunset with the picket fence.
It's one of those cheesy old Hollywood things, definitely. What about you, Steve? What'd you think?
Yeah, it is one of those things where that the romance is really, really rushed in that
Yeah.
respect to make the 90 minutes. Yeah, there's no way that would realistically happen. I would have thought that the way that they probably should have ended was what they were trying to set up in the beginning, which is, oh yeah, we're going to be on the lake under the moon in Havana and all of that. And I think had they ended it like on a similar note to that would have worked maybe a little better. Because at least then you're not implying like a 90-second relationship. You're not talking about like commitment like right after defeating the haunted house. But yeah, it's what you expect at that time. I mean, they had certain standards that they adhered to back then, and you don't expect them to kind of get too far away from it. And it's pretty typical with that. And yeah, they earned their happy ending. Yeah, I'm okay with
it. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, most unrealistic thing I've ever seen. I can't get a date in the last 5 years, let alone in the last 90 minutes. It's like Shadwing says, it goes back to it goes back to that romance. When you were saying about happy endings, all that was going through my head was Wayne's World. The super happy mega ending. It's Garth, I love you, dream woman. That's what it reminds me of, but yeah, it's again, I think it's, Adam said it, it's just the right amount of cheese. You can just go, yeah, okay, fair enough.
Everybody donate to Comic Crusaders. We're going to buy Paul a ticket to Havana to go bust ghosts there and find romance.
We can get on a trip to the Bunny Ranch.
Yeah. There you go. And bust ghosts there, It'll be just different type of ghosts, so different sheets.
Yeah, exactly.
Just differently. So, all right,
zombies.
So now that we've talked about that, let's hit the topic we kind of not avoided, but we saved for last because there are definitely some elements here. Let's talk about how this movie would translate to modern audiences. Do we think that this movie could be made today the way it was, and what kind of things, how would this hold up for a modern audience? So I'm going to kick this off with Steve.
Yeah, there's no way. Absolutely no way. I mean, it's not just, the fact that all of this is so dated in various respects. It's the fact that the jokes are just so off color. And they were, and I will tell you, and I was telling him before this started, if this was made today, Bob Hope would be canceled like multiple times over because so many of these jokes would be considered inappropriate. I mean, even the jokes that he made about Democrats, I think that by itself would get him canceled today. And that's leaving out the treatment of Willie Best and the way that he's written throughout the movie and like the constant off-color jokes about his race and all of this. There's no way that this would be accepted by modern audiences. Twitter would decry this thing. But so it is a movie of its time. I mean, I can't imagine trying to remake this at all today. I mean, you would take out basically a lot of the charm of the movie, trying to repackage it, and it just wouldn't be the same thing at all.
I think you would have to remove the character of Alex completely, which would really destroy the movie, because even though Alex is stereotypical, very stereotypical.
New notification from Google Chrome.
Everything.
Brianna Honak sent you a friend request.
Hang on a second.
www.facebook.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Hal the computer's coming for us. So, I think you'd have to remove Alex completely, and I think that would take a lot away from the movie. And as stereotypically as he's written, and some of the jokes, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to say this just for movie purposes for you all out there, but there was one joke like the lights of the city go out and he can't see Alex, and he makes a joke about Alex being born in a blackout. So it's just,
it was a blackout and a blackout. That was the line.
Yeah, that's it. So it's a complete racial joke.
Yeah. And there are a lot of those.
Yeah, and it makes you cringe a little bit, but at the same time, the character of Alex is very funny. So it's one of those things where you really have mixed feelings because you realize that this is a stereotype that is not acceptable anymore, and it's the same way with Disney too. But it's part of the charm of the movie. So it's like, and Willie Best took these roles, and he was very frustrated by the fact that he was found funny in these roles and got typecast in them. So it's an interesting thing. I also agree with you on the off-color humor. You know, a lot of Bob Hope's, especially his earlier movies, in The Cat and the Canary, he went after the Republicans. You know, so it's just like he pulled no punches. It was very, very ironic and funny. I'm going to kick over to Adam. What did you think about the movie and how, you know, would it translate for modern audiences? Could you show the
Hells no. This I could see this would be canceled so fast. You wouldn't know that it'd be canceled so fast.
Mm-hmm.
The same people that want to cancel Speedy Gonzalez would be all over this. You know, it. I guess was saying before we opened, this would be one of those movies where if it was on a streaming service, you would see that little stupid disclaimer. This was a movie made back in the 1940s, and we're keeping it up for historical purposes. But now that pop culture's gotten too damn sensitive, and we're all a bunch of wussies with a P, and no one knows how to take a joke anymore. But this was the Cuban stereotype in movies and television from about 1940 to about 1990, at least. I mean, you look at the Honeymooners episode with the Mambo dancer, and you look at Ricky, a lot of the I Love Lucy stuff.
I think what's really interesting.
It was just Cuban making. I just feel like this is something that was made today. You would have to take Alex out completely, and there goes the entire movie.
Well, it wasn't. I don't think it's just Alex either, though. I mean, I think what's interesting from a historical concept, if you really want to analyze a movie, is that the whole movie is stereotypes. You know, it's interesting how much of that time and that storytelling in that time was using stereotypes for everything. You had a stereotypical white rich man. You had to be he had to be fat. He had to be bumbling with his wife. His wife was overbearing. You had stereotypical dancers in Cuba and the stereotypical Cuban, you know, so everything was about stereotypes, you know, and that's how you told the story, through stereotypes.
Even the gang stuff was kind of stereotypical for the time period.
Absolutely, you know, and
yeah, although I like that he was French.
Yeah,
he was called Frenchy Duval. I'm like, that is not what the kind of people you associate with mobsters.
Yeah.
I did like that.
And
as soon as I heard the name, I was just like, okay, could they come up with a little bit more of a realistic name?
Yeah,
true.
And it's definitely something that you know, we're talking about modern audiences, but stereotyping groups of people or types of people or whatever has become unacceptable. But at that time, it was acceptable. I mean, I'm sure we've seen it in parents and grandparents as well. I mean, my grandparents are that way. So, Paul, what did you think for modern audiences?
No, I would agree with what you just said there. I think it's a generational thing, and I've said this before on previous Cinema Crusaders that we've done, you know, before. Is with each generation, you know, we learn a little more. You know, we should probably be ahead of where we're at, but it's like, you know, my dad would make inappropriate jokes, and he'd be laughing, and I'd be kind of going, "Oh Jesus," you know, but with a sense of, you know, because he used to play it as I'm a cheeky Irishman, so, you know, I can get away with it, and you kind of go, not that you can't, yeah, you know, and what he saw as funny, and his interactions with his generation and his friends were just off with mine, and, you know, there were things that I still remember genuinely walking away from him in a pub, and he was making, you know, no, it wasn't horrendous jokes, but it was just like, please stop. You know, and then someone went, "Isn't that your dad?"
So,
you know,
here's a question I have for all of you, real quick, and this is another rapid fire question before we go into our rating for the movie. We see this in this movie. We've seen it in comedy as well, where stereotypes were comedy for a long time. You know, you talked about people stereotypically. Some people made their whole living on it. Eddie Murphy is one of them who, used stereotypes as a way just to make jokes. And I don't think he was being hurtful about it, but that's what he did. Same thing. Even greater example, Sam Kinison, Andrew Dice Clay, even greats like George Carlin or Lenny Bruce, did stuff like that. So here's my question for you. Do you think that there is a place for stereotypical humor in today's world? Should we be trying to bring it back? This is kind of the thing that's going on with Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock right now. They're talking about how, we need to dial this back and go back to being able to laugh at jokes and understand that it's an observation. Or
I'm dying to, as a comedian, I'm actually dying to answer the question.
Okay, go for it. Let's hear it.
I think my whole approach to comedy is a take no prisoners approach. And as long as your intent is not to hurt anybody, and that it's just to make fun of things, so you cannot take things in life so seriously. And I think people should just learn how to be a little less. Okay, maybe there is a little truth in this.
See,
well, whatever the stereotype may be, I think if you're trying to be offensive and hurt people, then maybe you need to rethink of why you're getting in front of a microphone in the first place. If you're just want to make fun of everything and just really make observations, and you're making observations, and I really think it's in the context of the material.
What I find interesting with what you said there is that I agree with both sides of that. And I think there are some comedians working today that use stereotypes who get away with it because, I don't know, for whatever reason, they've got credibility with the people they're stereotyping. The best example I could think of is Bill Burr with the African-American community. He makes stereotypical jokes at their expense, but the people who are laughing the loudest at them are often people from that community, versus a contrast that with Dave Chappelle, who did a series of jokes about the LGBT community that didn't go down well. But I thought that they were very insightful and funny, But so
was that the stuff he was doing in his latest special that's on Netflix?
Yeah, it was the Sticks and Stones special. So it's very interesting the way that works. I'm going to kick it over to Paul. What do you think? Because I know you've done comedy as well.
I have, I did it for about 2.5 years. What I found with comedy was because I was I'd have a good old attack at the self, and I was able to attack my own heritage, if you like. I'd make jokes about my dad, and the more drunk he got, the thicker his accent got, and then before you knew it, he'd just have to have subtitles. And he heard me tell that joke once, and he just went. And I think if you're willing to kind of accept some crap about yourself, then it's okay to have a poke at what surrounds you. But I do, it's a very, very tricky area because I know some people, I've worked with comedians who enjoy the shock factor. Mm-hmm. I know of one comedian in particular. He wasn't happy unless he divided an audience.
Well, you look at Don Rickles,
Yeah, I couldn't do that. It's like as if half the audience got upset at him, then he felt he was doing his job. And I was like, and you go, I want to annoy these people. These are nice people, But he reveled in it, and that's where he found his source of comedy. And I think it's reflective of because he talk about things to do with himself. But yeah, I think it depends on what kind of comedian you are. It's like I was more than happy to spend most of my time. I mean, look at this, Jesus Christ, Then I was more than happy to spend my time laughing at myself. So I know we all see things differently. So it's a strange one.
See, once again, I'll say I think it's 6 of one, half dozen the other. It's like. I'm not really big into the people who want to hurt other people, just like you and Adam were
Oh,
both
God,
saying.
yeah.
But at the same
Mm.
time, I think you need to be willing to laugh at yourself. And I think that's kind of something that's really been lost nowadays. You know, it's like the person who's hardest on me and tells the worst jokes about me is me, you know? So,
Exactly. Yeah, I do
you
exactly
know,
the same.
you know, it's like I always say, this is a face for podcasting, not video casting. So, you know, unfortunately,
Just remember what Joker told the Harley Quinn in Mad Love. The toughest part of being a comedian is you're always going to take shots at people who just don't get the joke.
Well, that said, I'm going to throw it over to Shaywin because we all know how much he loves Joker. So,
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that character at all. But I don't know. As far as this kind of comedy go, I think you guys have covered it probably more than I would. I'm not one of those people that really likes, to do this a lot of really inappropriate type stuff. That's just not who I am. But at the same time, I kind of understand the importance of being able to tell uncomfortable truths from time to time. You need comedy, to be able to say things that, would otherwise be unacceptable, because sometimes things need to be said. So I can kind of understand like a place for like a Dave Chappelle or a Carlin or somebody like that, who can go and call people out like that, in probably the most uncomfortable way possible. But you laugh at it because that's where the humor comes from. There's that element, the grain of truth behind the joke. So as long as that's there, I can sort of see that. But yeah, at the same time, yeah, you don't want to hurt people unnecessarily. You don't want to, ruffle feathers that you don't need to. But so I think that's always a judiciousness. I think you kind of have to put into, any kind of humor when you do that. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got to say about it.
yeah, I think we got a little sidetracked there, but I think it's important. And I don't know, it's just a really tough line to walk because you think about someone like Lenny Bruce. I mean, we talk about cancel culture now, but you look at what they did to him, because of the way he was talking. So it was around even then. But now we look back at Lenny Bruce as a hero, as a trailblazer. So interesting. We could probably do a whole nother podcast on that topic if we wanted to, but maybe when Dave Chappelle comes out with another sketch and people are calling for his head, we'll do that or something. So that said, let's wrap this up with our scores out of 10 for this movie. And this is your personal score, so rate it or lambast this movie however you see fit. And I'm going to just go around the horn here. I'm going to start with Adam. What'd you think out of 10 for this movie? How would you rate this movie?
I'm going to give it about a 7.
Okay.
Like I said, I think if I had a copy of it in audio descriptors and some of the non-dialogue stuff was a little bit, I was able to understand what was going on a little bit better, it would have added to my enjoyment. The actress, like I said, she's 1940s hot, very pin-up-ish. It was nice to see Bob Hope when he wasn't just doing stand-up comedy for the troops. And, I look forward to redoing our next movie with whatever that will be.
Cool. Yeah. Going back to Bob Hope again, once again, I can't say enough. Check out some of his earlier movies. If you remember a movie called Liar Liar with Jim Carrey, that's based on an old Bob Hope movie.
I'm going to check out the Fancy Pants because, I'm a huge fan of Lucille Ball. So.
Yeah, it's definitely funny. Shadwin, what'd you think? What would you rate this movie?
Yeah, I would say I would probably be about an 8. I think it's pretty fine for the times, but there are definite elements that have not aged well culturally or in terms of effects. But for what it is and for what the experience it gives you, it's fun. The comedy is generally on point. Some of the jokes actually have aged halfway decently. Like, you may not have known who Seabiscuit was until the movie, but now you would sort of know, that from the movie, and maybe you wouldn't have known it before. So in some respects, it's unintentionally aged not that badly. And I really like a lot of of what it tries to do. I mean, I like the locations. I like the the chemistry between Hope and Goddard, and you know all these other characters that are going on. I mean, yeah, there's stereotypes, you know, but you get a pretty good cast, and you know, there's nothing that really took me out of the movie. You know, I didn't really. There are some problems with it logically, but you know, nothing that you know destroys suspension of disbelief. I think it's fine for what it is. I would say, yeah, about an 8. I would say.
Cool. Paul?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Adam on this one. I'm going to kind of say 7. I will always appreciate the romance of old cinema. You know, to flip it on its head here. Yes, there's a lot of inappropriate things said. You know, sign of the times. But there's still, when you think of you know, it was the era of, you know, these things coming out. So for me, it was like an almost regal time of cinema. You know, whenever you would see people, you know, they were beautifully kind of dressed, and you know, you've got as you say, you've got the pin-ups, you've got the kind of, you know, the Bob Hopes, your Bing Crosby's, perfect hair, and everything was immaculate, and it was, in a sense, it was very beautiful. And black and white films have always got an air of class about them, for me. But yeah, you know, I'd say easy watch. You know, some of it was throwawayable, like I say, the Scooby-Doo aspect. But yeah, I'd say 7's fair.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys. I was thinking I'd rate this movie 6.5, 7, like that, just because I think some of it hasn't aged really well, but it, like you said, it's an easy watch. Even if it hasn't aged well, I love Bob Hope. I think he's funny. It's a movie that I could throw on if I just need to just relax, sit back, and enjoy a movie. This is the kind of movie that I could throw in. Pretty much all the Bob Hope movies, you know, many of them are like that for me. A lot of older movies. So, do I think it's one of the greatest pieces of cinema ever created? No, but it doesn't need to be, because that's not the purpose of this movie. The purpose of the movie is just to entertain. And once again, I find it interesting, where for one reason or another, every time we do a Cinema Crusaders, our average score ends up lining up right with IMDb. The average score for IMDb for this movie is 7.2. So, you know, we're kind of right there with, which kind of shocked me, because I was figuring modern people rating this movie were rated much lower for the problematic aspects. But most people that are, I guess, cinephiles that want to rate movies appreciate what this movie brings to the table. And that's good to see. That's really good to see. So with that, we'll wrap up the show. I'm going to go ahead and kick it around if you guys have any closing thoughts, and then we'll get out of here. I'm going to start with Adam. Any closing comments about the movie or anything?
Like I said, it was an entertaining distraction from all the other stuff that I've been binging, and it really, I guess I'm trying to make some decisions about a few things. It was a beautiful way to just escape. Catch me on Tuesday night at 9 p.m. I love you all. Thank you for allowing me to be a member of the panel and a member of the Crusaders family.
You're more than welcome, and yeah, glad to have you here. Absolutely. Steve, what'd you think?
Yeah.
Any closing comments?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is that I'm definitely like in line with Paul with the idea that the romance of classic cinema is really kind of helps this movie a lot. And it's really kind of nice to be able to just enjoy a film for what it is, you know, rather than going in with a modern expectation of, you know, the story logic doesn't work because of whatever reason or another. And just, you know, and just enjoy, you know, watching just a little bit of humor every now and again and a little bit of romance and whatnot, and not worry too much about whether things make sense. So, you know, it's fine for what it is.
It is definitely fun. You know, one of the things that I've learned critiquing comic books and movies and TV shows and everything is sometimes it's a lot of fun to turn that part of my brain off and just sit back and enjoy something. Because once you get in that mode, that critique mode, I'm not going to say it ruins stuff, but it definitely makes you look at things differently. So, Paul, any last thoughts? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, well, I was going to say thoughts on this was it is also, you know, let's not forget that this is part of the evolution that became Ghostbusters, that became the remake that would possibly go on to influence something else. And it itself was based on a stage show. So from the boards to the Ghostbusters, for God's sake, come on,
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the evolutionary process of cinema. So it has its place, most definitely.
Not only that, this movie was born out of, like you said, a stage show and radio play. So then radio play made its way to the movies. So
exactly, that's it. So yeah.
Cool. Anything you want to put out there to plug for all of us, or we good? Or
obviously from my side of things, obviously if you can, check out asapcomicsuk.com. We've just done we've done an interview, a catch up with Al, not an hour or plus ago. So give that a look. I appreciate all the support and everything. So nice one. And
I know that Steve is doing Blitz for Omen Comics. Awesome. Yay. There it is. So check it out. What's the website for Omen Comics?
I think it is omencomics.com. I would go ahead and check, but I know that we're definitely on Comixology. I want to say that the release date for Blitz is on Comixology is the 7th of June, but I'll double check that. But it's definitely online. But it is currently available on Amazon, and it's currently available on Global Comics if you want to search there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I will just wrap up by saying, this is definitely one I would recommend. Check out. Just get yourself some popcorn, sit down, dim the lights, put this movie on, and just enjoy it with your feet up. As for me, you can check out, I'm working with Paul on Level 8. That stuff is getting churned out. Hopefully that'll be done sooner rather than later. I also know that I am bringing my novel, The Long Game, to Any One World. So I'm working with Paul on that. Yeah. So you can check all that stuff out on asapcomics.com. So for all of us here at Cinema Crusaders, thanks for checking us out. Please hit like and subscribe below. Hit us some comments. Tell us what you think. And we'll be back with another movie in 2 weeks. Next week, we are starting a new show that's also going to be part of Cinema Crusaders. We're going to be talking about some modern entertainment news. So check that out. We're going to be talking about a couple different things, including MODOK. I'm going to go a little bit into MODOK. We're going to talk about the new Batman. We're going to hit the Powerpuff Girls episode.
I'm sure you want me to go in that Powerpuff Girl route.
So we're going to be talking about that. And, we'll see everybody who's on there. So until then, this is Cinema Crusaders. Log it out. We're out of here.
Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this Comic Crusaders production. For real-time news on all things pop culture, please feel free to follow us on social media. For articles, original content, merchandise, and more, please go to www.comiccrusaders.com. Also follow along with all of the websites of the Comic Crusaders family. As always, if you like this content, please click like and subscribe to the Comic Crusaders YouTube channel.